What's up, folks? Welcome to 802 Garage. I'm going to try to make this a quick video about Gates timing belt kits specifically for Subarus, and I want to see if they have redeemed themselves. So a few years back, people started complaining that Gates timing belt kits no longer came with OE matched Japanese-made components. And so Gates, in response, released a new set of kits that they end with the N notation. I don't know what the N stands for, but basically this kit is the TCK WP328N. It is for dual overhead cam Subarus, and the WP means it comes with a water pump. The N means it comes with OE exact components. If you want the kit without the water pump, it's TCK328N. Now, their kits without the N, TCK328 and TCKWP328, will come with Chinese and otherwise manufactured components as opposed to the Japanese-made components, whereas everything in this is supposed to be OE exact replacement. You can see water pump made in China, so that's one component that's not going to be OE exact. Belt made in Japan, which is really nice. And then you can see the other components come from various manufacturers, apparently, that I'm pretty sure all the bearings are actually Japanese, exactly matching the OE. So I have a set of used Subaru components here from a 2004 Subaru Forester XT, and these are all OE as far as I know. The vehicle has about 105,000 miles on it, so it's just due for a timing belt change. This timing belt is marked Subaru. This is a Yamato water pump made in Japan, and all the rest of them are marked Japan, but I will compare each item individually. What I want to get to the bottom of here is this kit worth the money? Are all the components going to be as reliable as OE like the old Gates kits before they changed to using a bunch of Chinese and otherwise manufactured components? I also want to note quickly, the other kit that people usually recommend over the Gates is the AISIN kit, AISIN, which does use all OE components except for the water pump, which is still Japanese made, and it's really nice. That kit is $247.89 on Rock Auto right now. I'm just going to use Rock Auto prices because it's an easy point of comparison. You can shop around and sometimes get a better deal. The Gates kit, this exact kit, is $215.79. Also interesting to note, the non-N kit, the TCK WP328, is $196.99, and they actually call that the OE improved kit to make you think that it has better components than this kit, but I highly doubt that. I believe the water pump you would get is the same, but everything else is actually different. So for only $20 more than the normal kit, you can get the N kit, which has Japanese components, and I highly recommend that, but obviously we'll see throughout this video if it's actually worth the money. And for a little over $30 more, you can actually step up to the AISIN kit, which would get you the Japanese-made water pump. Additionally, if you want to buy an actual OE timing kit, I usually go to 6-Star Bernie, but of course you can go to a dealer as well. That's $390 for the timing components and belt without the water pump. So you're going to be looking at somewhere between $450 and $500 if you get an OE water pump as well. So this is definitely a significant savings, less than half the price with the water pump. Let's see how it is. So let's dig into this and start comparing. I did actually open this before, but I haven't actually opened anything, just so you know, full disclosure. And by the way, this video is in no way sponsored by Gates or any other company, completely independent. I spent my own money on this. So first we have the timing belt. And this is how it came in the box, a little bit wrapped up. It's not crimped anywhere. It's not bent smaller than the size of the smallest pulley, so it shouldn't be damaged. And this is supposed to be made in Japan, which it does say Gates Corporation. Gives you a direction of rotation. T328, never been smaller than pulley, made in Japan. So that's very nice. And I will say, I have definitely seen timing belts which appear worse quality than this. It has a very nice, pliable rubber feel, but very strong. Doesn't mean anything, but basically I have faith that this timing belt would perform fine. And I do want to get the other belt out of my way. So just to compare, on this belt, most of the lettering is pretty worn away, but it does say Subaru 13028AA200. It says, do not crimp, made in Japan. So this belt was made in Japan as well. Just compare the thickness on them real quick. Hopefully you can see that. So I will say they look dang near identical. This one being dirty, it looks ever so slightly different, but I don't actually think it's any thicker. They really appear to have extremely similar construction. I would not be surprised if it was the same factory that made these, but obviously I have no way to confirm that. The lines on the original Subaru belt are a series of dots, and actually the lines on this one are a series of dots as well. Marks in the same spot. So that's another signal to me that potentially these are made in the same factory. So again, I have no doubts that this belt will perform fine, so that's not a concern for me in this kit. Let me get those out of the way. These are just my opinions. You can disagree and get whatever kit you want. I am just sharing information. So then we have the entire rest of the set in a little plastic tray. And let's see, it says on this plastic, it says a couple important messages. We'll read that real quick. It says, read special instructions included in this kit before removing plastic sleeve. Installation instruction sheets and gasket are under tray. Good to know. So I should have read this beforehand, but I didn't. So looking at the manual that comes with this real quick, this is kind of cool. Gives you the full list of what it applies to. Gives you the instructions. Actually looks nearly identical to the factory service manual instructions, if not identical. So that is really nice that they actually give you correct instructions with this kit. Like I said, I know from having looked at the factory service manual many times, this is almost identical to the instructions that they give you. And all the torque specs listed here, that's really nice. I wonder if they corrected, there's one torque spec that they often get wrong. So one of the factory service manuals at one point was printed with a reading of, I believe, 58 foot-pounds for one of the idler pulleys. And it was actually supposed to be this 29 reading. So a lot of people would end up stripping their block by going to the incorrectly printed torque specification. So it looks like they got that right in here, which is nice. Multiple languages. So I'm really happy with that little manual. Good that you get that for the money. I know this is going to be what most people are concerned with, so we're going to move right on to the tensioner. So there's two major concerns with the tensioners. The first one being that the bearing is made in Japan. You can see that is NTN, Japan. So that bearing, I believe OE identical. This one, NTN, Japan. Hopefully that's easy enough to read. I could read the part numbers, but I'd be pretty sure they're identical. Washers and bolt look pretty much identical, so I'm happy with that. However, this says Japan NTN on the actual tensioner body, and this tensioner body has no location marked on it, which is a little bit sketchy. There is a part number down here. I'll read it. 190708. Yep, 190708. And this one does have a stamping in the same spot, but you can tell the mold's a little different too. 030523, and those could just be production codes. So the date stamp is different on these. The body looks a little bit different, and this tensioner assembly does not say made in Japan. Seals look slightly different as well. Actually, no, the seals look pretty much identical. This one says NOK. NOK is a reputable manufacturer of seals. They make a lot for OEMs. That one actually says NOK as well. So these seals might be identical. So that's nice. I'm going to assume that this is not a Japanese made tensioner just because I cannot confirm that it is, and I would think it would be printed on there. So that's not ideal. Up to you if you want to risk that. A lot of people don't. So that's the tensioners compared. Let's move on to one of the pulleys. So we have one of the idler pulleys here. These are both Koyo. Koyo bearing, Koyo bearing. Same stamping on the inner race as well. So these are identical. Good to know. So that's good. That checks out. We have another identical to that brand new right here. And that replaces this single roller in the original. So this was an NSK, this is a Koyo, but this is a double roller, and this is a single roller. So this is going to be an upgrade over the OEM, which most kits should provide you with these days, because that's part of the changes they made to these kits over time. I believe it'll just last longer than this one. This one is not dry, but it's getting there. That one's okay. This is okay, but you can see the grease was weeping. So then we also have the little smaller idler here. I guess they give you a nice bubble wrap for this one specifically, not sure why. So this is interesting. This one says Gates. Little printed T41239. This one was NTN Japan. Otherwise, they do look similar, but this one does not say where it was made, so I'm basically going to assume China, Thailand, etc. Otherwise, it is a double roller. Everything else checks out, so that's a component that you're not getting OE or better. Here we have the idler sprocket, and this one is NSK Japan. Identical NSK Japan. So that checks out as well. This is for the timing belt guide spacing. You put that in over the crank sprocket where there's a timing belt guide that is on the manual cars. The automatics usually don't have it, and that just gives you the proper spacing. They give you a little bit of thread locker, medium strength. They give you one of the date stickers so that you can see the date and the mileage at which it was replaced, which is nice. Here we go. We have the gasket. And this is another thing that a lot of people worry about, which I I'm usually concerned with as well, which is one, it does come with both a thermostat gasket, which is nice, and the gasket for the water pump, and this is the metal style seal. So you do not have to use any RTV or anything like that, not the paper style seal. It does say made in China. That doesn't particularly concern me. It's a piece of metal with a rib and 2 rubber gaskets. China's perfectly capable of making that in amazing fashion. They can make amazing bearings as well too. It all depends on what factory they come from, but I am definitely in the camp of preferring Japanese bearings because we know that they are a good known quantity. So this water pump does say made in China. Here you have it. And I will say it feels a little bit light, which is kind of strange, but fittings match, which is good. Zinc plated, won't rust right up immediately, hopefully. And it is the stamped style impeller. And so we will compare that to the original Subaru water pump. Also, just noticed that the tensioner actually came with a new bolt here as well, which is nice. Which means it also has that little retaining O-ring on it too. The old one also has that. So again, another good sign there. But so comparing the water pumps, like I said, this one is Yamada. The one on the left is unknown. They look very similar on the front. The ribbing design is a little bit different. This one looks a little bit stronger. I will say this one is definitely a little bit heavier, so a little bit beefier construction, more so than just that bolt would make up for in weight. The inside castings, I'd say they look pretty equally as good. There is a little bit extra glue, basically sealant on that pipe there, and a little bit extra on the others. I don't think that'll cause any issues, but it's not ideal. There's actually a little casting flash in here on this one that never came off, so that's fine, but that's the original Subaru pump. This one looks pretty decent inside. Give you a look in to the impeller, look in to the impeller. To me, no major visual differences. This passage looks like it might be ever so slightly skinnier, but I'm not going to verify that, so just take it at face value. I don't think it would affect function in any way. Looking at the back side, everything looks fine here. This is a decently machined surface, a few little nicks and scratches on it. This surface actually has a weird machining on it, but the impellers look pretty similar, and the way they taper down in there also looks pretty similar. Kind of hard for you to see on camera, I'm sure, but the taper to that inner cone, if you will, right there. Yeah, these look, for most intents and purposes, pretty identical. The clearance from that fin to that wall is important, and it's pretty similar there as it is to there. So that's good. And then the clearance of the blades to that surface is important. And that looks like maybe a couple millimeters at most. There is actually an exact spec, and that looks like maybe ever so slightly tighter. So would I doubt that this water pump might perform a couple % better than this one? No. Do I think it'll make a difference in the overall running of your vehicle, especially stock? No, I don't. So I have no real qualms with this water pump. People have run Chinese water pumps plenty. This one is actually stamped Gates on it, and at least it does have a Gates warranty. So the bearing could fail faster than an OE pump, but you usually change these with your timing belt anyways. So I personally don't have any doubts that this would last 100,000 miles. I'm happy it came with the metal seal and the gaskets, so I'm not upset with that. And we have one more bit of instructions here. Timing component limited warranty. They like their paperwork. Water pump installation instructions. That one looks more like general instructions, not specific to Subaru. We have a technical service bulletin here for applications using the below timing belts. Hydraulic timing belt tensioner. Here's where the thread locker comes in. I thought that's what it was. Apply thread locker to tensioner pivot bolt threads prior to installation. I'm assuming the movement in this can over time cause that to back its way out, so they don't want to prevent that. Gates engineers have determined that certain Subaru timing components demand special attention in order to complete the proper setup and ensure timing component longevity. These areas include following the proper tensioner bleeding procedure. Please note, to ensure proper running, all hydraulic tensioners must be bled for installation. In this case, we only have one. Inspect the aluminum threads on the tensioner bracket for damage. Always a good plan. Applying Loctite to the tensioner bolt and torquing all components properly. The Loctite's new. Always torque to spec with timing components. Don't be a dummy. Ensuring there is adequate clearance between the timing belt and timing belt guide. Yes, that's why they give you the nice nifty little spacer. In my case, I'm not using one. Inspecting the tensioner bracket. The tensioner bracket and threads for the tensioner mounting bolt are aluminum and easily damaged. Before installing the new tensioner, inspect the tensioner mounting threads and dowel pin for any signs of damage. If any damage is present, it is advised to replace the bracket before continuing. Good to know. And when installing the tensioner, place a few drops of the supplied Loctite to the first few threads, the tensioner mounting bolt, and torque to 29 foot-pounds. So that's really nothing new here. Proper belt clearance. They show you how to use the spacer for manual transmission equipped vehicles. Ensure proper clearance between the timing belt and timing belt guide. They go over that. Pretty basic. Tighten belt guide bolts. They give you the torque spec. That's awesome. So this is a nice little technical service bulletin that will help you make sure your timing system is put together properly. All this information is available online, but at least if you bought this kit, you would now know. Bleeding installations for the hydraulic type tensioners. I'm just going to read this real quick and I'll give you the gist of it. Pause it if you want the exact instructions. And here's the diagram. So the basic gist of this is hold the tensioner with the piston upwards like that. Release the grenade pin, as they like to call it. So from your view like this. So this should be straight up, vertical, pointing towards the sky. Release the pin. Put it into a vise and compress the piston very slowly all the way. I'm assuming flat to that surface essentially. And it should take more than 1 minute to do the full compression. So you should be counting Mississippis and just very slowly turning it. Do that 3 times. And then put the grenade pin back in, then install in the car, and then release the pin. And that is to just make sure that any air that somehow made its way in here from this thing being shipped gets forced outward. A lot of people complained with the Gates kits when they switched to Chinese-made components that they were having failures with the tensioners, and Gates said, that's ridiculous. You really need to follow this procedure. I've heard less complaints since people have been following this procedure, but that doesn't mean you have to rely on it. I do think a lot of timing belt install fails are the installer's fault rather than the company's, but I definitely think that it can be the company's fault and they should take responsibility. Including instructions like this not only helps the end user, but is a good cover your bum for Gates itself. So do follow these instructions. Make sure you bleed the tensioner, and there are instructions in multiple languages. So there you have it, folks. That is the entire Gates kit. Again, that is TCKWP328N. which is the OE exact component kit. I will say they did miss a couple times. This idler specifically, not being a Japanese bearing, is not my favorite, especially since it is a very small pulley, which means it rotates more quickly than the rest of them. However, it is also one of the pulleys with the least tension on it, and they don't usually go bad from what I know, as long as they're the double roller design. This is, of course, not an OE exact component either, but the OE exact part actually refers to the timing components. And then, of course, the tensioner is a potential big miss, since this does not say made in Japan on the tensioner body itself, though it does still look quality, have a quality seal, comes with the proper bolt and all the little accessories, and it is a Japanese bearing. I like the metal seal. I like the gaskets. I like that they give you the other double roller idler, and that the sprocket is, of course, an OE match as well. Oh, and of course, as I mentioned, you do have the timing belts, and I have no concerns about this one. It looks like it's probably made at the same factory as the original Subaru belt, so that's a nice high quality piece, at least to my eye. So there you have it. If you've been wondering if the Gates N kits are actually worth it, if Gates has redeemed themselves for the Subaru community, here's what it is. It's up to you. I personally have no qualms installing this kit, especially at around $215, saving me over $200 from buying OE components. Personally, when I'm broke, this is what I'll go with. If I had a brand new Subaru and I had only had it 5 years and I was doing my first timing belt change, I would probably go ASIN and just buy an OE water pump or use the ASIN water pump, because that's only $30 more. So in that case, $30 to $40 more might be well worth it to go with the ASIN. And if you really, really want to go hardcore, go to 6-Star Bernie or to the dealer and buy an actual OE kit. But personally, my only major concerns would be this wearing out a little bit sooner, and the tensioner maybe not being quite as good, but I don't think it'll fail. And the water pump not being Japanese, to me, they look pretty much identical. I don't think it'll have any issues. So make up your own minds. I will put links to all of the kits I mentioned down in the description below if you just want to look at them. I'm going to link Amazon because it's easiest for me. And if you do check out those links, even if you don't buy them, it can help out the channel, just because I'll get a little kickback from Amazon if you do buy something. But absolutely no pressure whatsoever, and pick whichever kit you want. I will link actual OE Subaru kits from Amazon as well, which sometimes you can get a good deal on, and it won't be nearly as expensive as buying it direct from the dealer. So please do go check those out. Any questions, comments, concerns, please leave them in the comment below. This was definitely a bit longer than I wanted it to be, but hopefully you enjoy the thorough in-detail spec. I know when you're doing something as important as a timing component kit on your car, you want to make sure it's right. And I just wanted to give you this info because I've been wondering for a long time if the Gates N kits were actually as good as the old Gate kits with all Japanese components. And here you have it. For the most part, I think yes, a few misses, a little bit of misleading advertising, but I do think that the N kit is going to be better than the non-N OE improved kit. So I would go with this if you're on a budget. I definitely wouldn't get any other kit personally that is not ASIN or OE. It does look to me like Continental and perhaps a couple other brands use primarily OE Japanese components, but I can't be sure, and I'm not going to buy all the kits just to check. Let me know if you found a kit that comes with all OE components in the comments below. There you have it, folks. Hope you appreciate the info. Please do subscribe if you like in-depth videos like this, automotive knowledge, and project cars in general. Thank you so much. I'll catch you soon on 802 Garage.